So we decided to switch places right before this talk. I'm going to be talking Diogo's book, and he's going to be asking me hard questions. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm Amanda Cassatt, founder, CEO of Serotonin. I'm here with Diogo Monica, co-founder and chairman of Anchorage Digital, the only federally chartered bank in the U.S. that does crypto, the chairman of the Near Foundation, and a general partner at Haun Ventures. I think it's interesting to remember, relevant to this conversation, that Haun invested in Bridge, which is the stablecoin company acquired by Stripe. And he was an angel in this, as well as being part of the Haun portfolio. And he just led the Series B for the largest stablecoin router, BVNK. How are you pronouncing that? BVNK?
I think they...
you don't want to pronounce it bunk, like Bulgari?
I think they inverted the
Bulgari? Bunk? Okay, got it.
BVNK is good.
And Anchorage also recently announced the creation of USDG, a stablecoin consortium. So we're going to also talk a bit about that.
Let's do it.
Cool. So let's talk about Bridge first. So in my world, where we're helping startups achieve great things, obviously Bridge made waves as the biggest ever acquisition in the crypto space. And I was looking at who the founders are and what the product is. I'd never heard of it before. And the reason is I'd never met these guys at conferences. I hadn't seen them on crypto Twitter. And then I realized that they were ex-Stripe employees. So from the outside, it kind of looks like Stripe wanted to build stablecoin stuff but couldn't build it in-house, so that they had these guys do it, and then they acquired it. So I guess my question for you is, what is Bridge and how does it work? How is Stripe planning to use it? And is there anything that builders in the crypto space can learn from the model of Bridge, or not really? Was it kind of Stripe inside baseball?
Look, I think there's a question behind the question that I think at some point you should ask, which is, are stablecoins crypto? So we'll get to that. But for now, let me just say that there's a lot of stuff happening outside of crypto that is happening outside of this room, that is happening by just normal traditional fintech. And that's actually been the superpower of stablecoins. Stablecoins have given us the best way to talk about crypto with a traditional person without having to start in Bretton Woods and talk about inflation and 2009, the crisis. You don't have to talk about store of value. And that's magnificent, because you can finally explain a better payment technology to anyone that uses crypto. However, specifically with Bridge, the founders were actually ex-Square. So not Stripe, they were ex-Square. And so it was not Stripe to Stripe, it was Square to Stripe, which, you know, I guess they're all starting with S, and they're all like, you know, some shape or another. But I actually know Zach and Sean, because I was part of the M&A team at Square that acquired their company 14 years ago into Square when I was at Square. And then they went on to Coinbase, Brex, and then they started Bridge.
My bad with the Stripe instead of Square.
Oh, they're all the same. People say that I worked at Stripe all the time, and they're like, no, actually, just, you know, total different shape. Anyway, what happens here is we're all building something really cool in crypto, and many of us care deeply about decentralization, but the reality is that the promise of the things that we've built is that anyone can use it for anything. And so these people come along and say, hey, stablecoins actually are the killer use case for crypto. They are ex-fintechs, again, Brex, Square, et cetera, and they want to do is they want to make it extremely easy for any institution to use stables for the things that they're good at. They're not good for everything, but for the things that they're good at. And so it makes tons of sense that it is a traditional fintech that you've never heard about, and players and employees of ex-fintech companies that pick up this new technology, which is candidly very easy to integrate with, and build something on top that looks exactly like Square, that looks exactly like Stripe. And it is, you're absolutely right that the acquisition is one of the biggest catalysts in the space of stables, period. And now everybody's talking about it, and all these board meetings at very large companies, including Visa, et cetera, just completely have changed the tone about stables, where they were, you know, skeptical but optimistic, and now they're just, you know, gung-ho, let's go, we need to do something here.
So what does Stripe plan to do with Bridge? What's their plan with stablecoins, and why? And maybe we can use that as an entry point into, like, what's the big use case for these payment processors?
Yeah, so, okay, so we'll start with a little bit unknowable. I know John, I know Patrick, they're great. You see the obvious one. I think one of the narratives that you hit is actually absolutely true, which is, I don't know if Stripe internally could have built this. And so it makes a lot more sense for you to...
For why? Why could they not have built it?
Part of the reason is that every single fintech is anti-crypto, like, to a certain extent. Basically, the more you know about a space, the more you don't like new things happening in the space. It's just, we have an expression in Portuguese, which is called velhos do restelo. It's basically that. It's, you know a lot about payments, and so you hate the fact that stablecoins are successful. You hate stablecoins with all your being because you are the expert in the old system and you don't like the new system. And so what happens is Stripe is an extremely large, extremely compliant company that does payments, that does lots of different things, and all of a sudden shows up this technology that is weird, that is a little bit gray area. Should you support Tether? Should you not support Tether? Is it real? Is it not real? They can't touch it. And so it's much easier for them to acquire something from the outside than to have to deal with all the resistance. Even if you're a CEO of the company, for you to have your team to do something that they're not naturally inclined to do, it's basically impossible. Even if you're the CEO, you're not going to just immediately, are you going to do it? No, you're taking too long, you're fired. Next, are you going to do it? No, you're taking too long, fired. You're not going to do that, right? That's not how you build a good culture. And so acquiring somebody that is doing it and letting them run independently is absolutely the right thing to take at this. What are they going to do with it? Well, let me tell you about what Bridge is doing first. So Bridge had 4 big businesses. One of the things that they allowed people to do was this card issuance, that you could pay the cards, the actual issuance card with stables. But the 2 biggest use cases for them were, well, there's also stablecoin issuance. They allowed you to do stablecoin issuance. But the 2 biggest use cases for them are what I call treasury management, let's call it, which is really repatriation of cash. Example, SpaceX has Starlink in Brazil. They receive payments in BRL, which is Brazilian reais, and they need to get the BRL as fast as humanly possible onto the US because it's being inflated away, because the partner bank is not trusted, for whatever reason. And in the traditional financial world, they have 4 counterparties. It takes them 7 days. It's extremely expensive. In the stablecoin world, they partner with Bridge. Bridge goes to a local OTC provider, immediately exchange currency, and then every 15 minutes, they can actually settle the reais, almost like in a streaming way, back to the account of SpaceX. So this is the general conceptual version of treasury management is you have a currency that you don't like, and you need a cheap way of getting it back to the US, period. And then the 4th thing that they do is what we call generally payouts, but the ability of paying people internationally usually, so across borders for whatever it is. And an association of that is you are a company in Brazil or you're a company in the US and you want to pay a company in Brazil. Why would you go to the pain of getting dollars all the way to reais to pay them in the local PIX? What if you could just send them USDC to settle your vendor, and that would be done, less counterparty risk, works on weekends, etc. So this would be a payouts. Those are the 4 biggest use cases.
Cool. So just to steelman the anti-stablecoin perspective,
Love it.
Or of someone who's just learning about stablecoins, I mean, there are ways to send cross-border payments today, right? There's SWIFT, there's ACH, and yes, stablecoins are settling and enabling those transactions to happen a lot faster. What is it about SWIFT and ACH and the existing mechanisms those banks have that they can't just improve in order to settle faster?
There's nothing that they can't improve to settle faster. So from a speed perspective, you're absolutely right. I think we could just build FedWire v3.0 or SWIFT 3.0, and it will be exactly as fast and exactly as able to do it. And so the answer is partly they haven't, and these things have existed for a long time. Why they haven't is that there are structural advantages of making it slow. Structural advantages in many ways. Number one, from a compliance perspective, you don't need to be as good at compliance because you have 2 to 3 days to judge whether a transaction is good or not. So literally, if it's an international payment, you hold it for longer so your compliance people can actually have time to look at it. It's kind of dumb, but it gives you an advantage. You don't have to hire as many people. You don't have to automate your systems. Number 2, you can actually make NIM, net interest margin. If it's very slow and you're keeping it for 7 days, somebody's going to make money. And so there's...
You lend it out while it's sitting there?
No. You don't lend it out. Just by holding it on a cash bank account, you're getting net interest margin. You're getting yield for the money that is there. And 3 days of trillions of dollars, even if it's just for 3 days, it's a lot of, pardon the expression, fucking money, right? And so it's great that you have that business model. But that business model actually plays against you wanting to be quick. So structurally, there's reasons as to why these things aren't fast. But technically, there's no reason why they wouldn't be.
There's nothing stopping them.
However, stablecoins have other characteristics. Stablecoins are accessible without permissioning. What I mean by that is I can't just go and access SWIFT. I can't just go and integrate with ACH by, in 15 minutes getting my laptop and doing it. It turns out that this is the killer use case. Maybe the mental model that I would use is the following. Stablecoins for the first time invert the burden of a company integrating with the local rails. What I mean by that is the following. Stripe had to go to almost 200 countries, go to the local markets, find local partners, settle in the local payment systems, integrate them, do reconciliation, do tons and tons and tons of like thousands of hours of work to be able to support every single company individually. The company needed to do that. And by the way, whatever Stripe competitor, Adyen, had to do the exact same thing and go into each country and support each. So there's so much redundant work that is being done because each payment company that has its own systems is going to each country, integrating with its own payment systems. So it's kind of like an n-squared explosion of participants, which is horrible and creates a lot of inefficiency. What stablecoins have created is essentially they've inverted the game. We have a Schelling point. The Schelling point is the blockchain. The Schelling point is USDT or USDC. And so what happens is, independently, all 200 countries, there's some local player that is going to do local currency to USDC without you even like talking to them or without you even knowing who they are. They're going to do it. I can guarantee you, because every single country has this already. Everybody's playing at it. Everybody's trying to increase liquidity. Everybody's trying to make it easier. And then you come along as a fintech and you say, oh, if I want to receive payments now, the only thing I need to do is open up an address. And so I've inverted the onus of integration. I need to integrate with one thing, and everybody else does the work of integrating for everyone, versus me as an individual company having to go and integrate. And this is fundamentally different in terms of cost.
So the killer feature of stablecoins is permissionlessness, and that creates an incentive system that pulls everybody on chain.
That's exactly right. I should have said that, but you know, I like to ramble.
No, I had the benefit of coming afterwards. So if that's the case, why can't Swift just become permissionless?
It's just not building to us to create, I mean, even our system struggles with decentralized versus centralized. And the reality is that these are payments. This is money. There's lots of rules and regulations. And in general, when there's rules and regulations, you want things to work well. Our financial system actually works extremely well for what it is. It is built with like, you know, spit and duct tape in many cases, but it works really well. Like you're not fearful right now, maybe you are, but you're not fearful right now if you're looking at your app and your money in your bank account being like stolen. That's not something that we think about day to day. Maybe you are if you're using a wallet, but if you're using a traditional bank account, that usually does not tend to happen. And part of that is the trust in the system, and part of that is the regulations and the years of competence of the things, and that's just extremely slow, and it really benefits a centralized entity where the CEO can go to jail if something goes wrong. And if there's no CEO to go to jail, all of a sudden things become very weird. You know, in the particular case of stablecoins, it's actually sort of a psyop. It's fully centralized. There's a CEO. They can block all transactions. They can reissue every single transaction. They can literally seize your amount of stablecoins on your address by minting it to another stablecoin. I mean, who cares? They own the money. The money's in the bank account at BNY Mellon. It's their money. It's not your money. It's just an IOU that is on chain that is represented and integrated with DeFi. But let's make no mistake. It's fully centralized. It is fully centralized, but it's permissionless. And Swift doesn't have the ethos, doesn't have the incentive. They're making a lot of money. And so it's Rich Christensen's innovator's dilemma. They're never going to do something that you know, it's unnatural to them and plays against their own benefit.
Yeah, so where I wanted to arrive at is that there isn't some technical reason why it's impossible that Swift would ever come and compete with the benefits of stablecoins. It's not like technology has unlocked something that only one player can use. Anyone could have done it, but it's just the replacement of the financial stack with a technology because it's choosing to build in that direction.
I think that's fair. The only, you know, if I had to like sort of play the other side a little bit, the only thing is that the fundamental technological innovation that blockchain has permitted you has been self-custody. It's been the ability of generating a private key and holding it. And that's just so foreign to how we build every single other system that you almost can make it in an isolation of like, they can't do it without being crypto. So crypto needs to exist. Stablecoins needed crypto. It needed to be crypto, which they are. For them to fundamentally be successful, I think would be my attempt at claiming it.
So let's talk about the relationship between stablecoins and crypto. So when I got into crypto, I thought, along with everybody else, that people would be using Bitcoin, ETH, etc. for payments. We didn't really think about stablecoins. But then it became clear that the killer use case of blockchains is being a transport layer for the US dollar, and that the US dollar really, you know, ETH, Bitcoin, a lot of tokens have some product market fit, but the US dollar has way more product market fit than all of those. So I guess my question is, how does stablecoin adoption benefit the rest of crypto?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. So I'll say it differently, which is the killer use case of crypto is actually trading. It's speculation. That's the killer use case of crypto, period. Nobody here is ever going to present me data to otherwise because that just are the facts. And because trading is the killer use case, we needed something to trade against. You're not going to trade Bitcoin against Ethereum because they're sort of like correlated as an actual fundamental. If you're a trader, you're not going to get a de-risked trade on Bitcoin. So we needed to trade a pair. And you can't trade Bitcoin towards USD because every time you touch the traditional financial rails is very slow. So by necessity, we created crypto native dollars so we could trade against them. That's why stablecoins are created. That, by the way, that's 90% of the activity or 80% of the activity is still trading, like you're trading pairs in and out. The beauty of this is that now you all in this room have one of the most clear, crisp answers to what does speculation create. Speculation created stablecoins. And what did stablecoins create? Now stablecoins create the ability of somebody in South America of holding dollars. So this sequence is absolutely true. We created it because we all want to get rich and we all want to trade. And then out of all wanting to get rich, we've created this piece of infrastructure and this technology that now gets to be wrapped by Bridge and by BVNK, which have nothing to do with trading really, but now get to build like new functionality on top and new products and services for consumers and for institutions alike that have real value. So it all comes downstream of trading and speculation, which is kind of fascinating. So that's the relationship with crypto. It was an answer to a problem, which is we want to trade, and we want to trade against some pair that is on the traditional world, and that's the dollar. And then from that, it came, okay, now we can use this thing for, inflation-resistant store of value, for payouts, for disbursements, for treasury management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so the idea is just as more of these assets come on chain, it's easier to transact with crypto native assets as well. Maybe you could also talk about RWAs and the role stablecoins are going to play bringing RWAs on chain.
Yeah, but right now, really, RWAs, the success of RWAs aren't really RWAs. What is BUIDL? Well, outside of an amazing conference in Europe, but it is an RWA that is a wrapped money market. You know what I call that? A yielding stablecoin. That's what it is. It is a yielding stablecoin. That's what BUIDL is, a security, but it is a money market that is securitized on chain, which can be seen as a yielding stablecoin. What are people using it for? As a trading pair, as a store of value that on the weekends is generating yield versus USDC that is making, Jeremy richer, right? So that's the fundamental thing that's happening in RWAs is even that is it's the same thing. It's a stablecoin. It's a yielding stablecoin. And so now people are obviously trying to do native yielding stablecoins, centralized yielding stablecoins, but BUIDL and all these things that are happening in RWA space are still primarily driven by the fact that stables are such a killer use case for crypto, and yielding stables are a much better product than just a stable coin that is losing 5 points of opportunity cost a year.
So it's pretty obvious that of all the different stable coins, that USD denominated ones have the best product market fit. What's kind of the macro on that? Do you think that stable coins are going to lead to increased dollar denomination of assets worldwide? Do you think that other countries or consortia are going to launch their own competing pegged stable coins? Like how is the US thinking about this? Do you think, are they happy about exporting US dollar denomination, or are they leery about stable coins?
Yeah, so it turns out the United States position on stablecoins is changing January 20th. I'm going to be on a plane to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, so it's going to be a pretty stark difference between before and after. Let me just start with, there's no other stablecoins than dollars, period. It doesn't exist. There's like a few $1 million here and there, but it's 99.9% of all stablecoins are dollars, period, game over, like nothing else exists. Any attempt to do anything else is going to be met with utter failure. And so
no BRICS denominated or RMB?
Nothing. Arguably like RMB is a digital currency already, but not in a crypto sense, but I don't think so. And I think that, yes, to answer some of your questions, it is absolutely amazing for the US dollar dominance, and it's exactly amazing for us to continue extending the reach of the United States power, which, again, remember, like a stable coin on somebody's wallet can be seized at any point by USDT or USDC, right? And so who has the actual dollars? BNY Mellon. And who does BNY Mellon respond to? The United States government. So they can literally go into BNY Mellon and just take the dollars away, and your stablecoin is worth nothing. And so let's put things in where they are, which is the United States dollar is increasing its dominance if stablecoin issuance in dollars continues unabated, which it seems like it is continuing. And so this is really good for the US dollar. It does not compete against the US dollar. This is the US dollar. So that's one thing, which is, by the way, one of the things that every time I'm in the White House or I talk to a senator or I talk to a regulator, I tell them this. You should be regulating this and doing something that you're not doing right now, which is make it easier. Mandate it. Make it more incentivized for a U.S. company to issue $1 and just bring all of the revenue that Tether is generating to the U.S. Just make it so that a stablecoin that is a dollar stablecoin outside of the United States cannot hold T-bills. Period. Just do that. And the moment you do that, only Americans can actually have stablecoins that are real stablecoins from the region of Champagne. Like real dollar stablecoins with T-bills are only American stablecoins. And just tax the heck out of the $6 billion of net income that Tether has. That's what you do. That's what you go after. You make money, you have less debt, you have continued innovation, and you're expanding the United States dollar. And I don't know how they don't see this, because it's hitting them in the face. It's just hitting them in the face, and it's so obvious to everyone in this room that that's actually the right path forward. As far as BRICS go, Trump publicly has said that if anybody tries to adopt a currency that is not the United States dollar as a trading pair, is going to tax them or tariff them 100%. And funny enough, you think that people wouldn't, I don't know, my view of this is like Trump says lots of things, and so we sort of like average it out and like discount it and sort of like try to do tea leaf reading and like how serious is he this time. But they're taking it really seriously. They're like, the stable coins mean that if we use stable coins instead of $1, we're okay? And I've had this question. I literally have had this question for financial institutions in the Middle East. UAE, Saudi, Bahrain. Like, they ask me, okay, is Trump serious about the 100% tariffs? And if so, can we use stable coins as an alternative? So honestly, this is benefiting stablecoin adoption, which is fantastic. So whatever he's doing, just keep pushing for it. But I really think the key point that all of you should push every time you see someone and talk to someone, even at dinner with your parents, like bring up the conversation of stablecoins and say, you know what the United States should do? No stablecoins should be able to hold T-bills unless they're an American company issuing stablecoins. And this is how the United States is great again.
Wow, very, very patriotic, but from my country. Interesting. So I guess last question. Do you agree with people's projection that we'll have a $3 trillion stablecoin market cap fairly shortly? And what do you think the obstacles are that we need to get through in order to achieve that? Because you've made it seem like a pretty smooth path forward.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be smooth. There's lots of risks. And one of the biggest things about stables that people don't fully grok right now, so maybe let me structure it this way. Something that is in the public perception, I would say, of 80% of the people in this audience that is not true, is that stablecoins are actually not cheaper. Stablecoins aren't cheaper. They aren't than traditional mechanisms. Visa Direct charges no bips, can do payouts in basically 150 countries, and they charge 15 cents to 25 cents per transaction. And stablecoins right now are not internalizing the cost of compliance. And so we've been subsidizing stables by running an arbitrage, which is a regulatory arbitrage. And so it's not the fully loaded cost. So stablecoins are not cheaper than traditional mechanisms. They're cheaper than many of them. They're cheaper than ACH in many cases, SWIFT in many cases. They're faster finality. They don't have counterparty risk. They're easily accessible and programmable. So they have other advantages that maybe you're willing to pay more for them. But cheaper is not one of them right now for many of the use cases. And this needs to be in your minds. Right now, stablecoins right now are not cheaper. We're saying that they're cheaper, but they're not. And they're not internalizing the cost of compliance, which they will, because we can't allow these things to run amok because it's going to end stablecoins. And so there are risks, there are hidden costs, we're in an infancy stage where we get to run the game and have the best of both worlds. We get to say that it's US dollar and say that it's a real rail and say that it's production ready, et cetera, while hiding under the rug the fact that we're not spending nearly as much money as you need to for these things to actually come fully loaded. So that's an interesting one that stands between us and $3 trillion.
Bonus question. Is there a place in the world for decentralized stablecoins?
I think so. By the way, I'm not fundamentalist about anything. I think my view on this is experimentation. See what works. It's always been the beauty of capitalism is you have an idea, you fundraise, you try it out, the market tells you if you're right or wrong. And in fact, the market seems to tell me that decentralized stablecoins do have a place. And then you need to be very clear on what the risks are and tell the institutions and the consumers what they're getting, so you can't say you're doing something that is like a Luna-like algorithmic stablecoin backed by itself and say that it's a stablecoin. I don't think they should be able to call that a stablecoin, but I also don't think that we should create regulations that just make it forbidden that you can run like algorithmic or like Athena-like stablecoins that actually depend on like the basis and other types of yield generation. I think those are all beautiful experiments. They seem to be working, and they absolutely are worth existing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Questions for Diogo? Yes.
Everyone
Blue
here.
shirt with the mic.
Are you listening to me? Yeah.
This one? Yeah, there we go.
So we talked about US dollars. What about the other central banks? Like European central banks? They don't want stable coins in the USD.
Yeah. How do I say this in a delicate way? Europe doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the ECB does. Doesn't matter what they want. Doesn't matter what they don't want. It just doesn't matter. It's not relevant. The only thing that is relevant in Europe is the fact that they can throw you in jail if you list a stablecoin that is not approved by MiCA, and that's actually been a powerful tool for them to sort of like kick out honestly USDT out of the United States, out of Europe, and have USDC and other stablecoins, have their moment in the light. But Europe is great at regulating, and so they're not good at anything else. So I'm not concerned about Europe. I live here. I'm on a panel after this, I think, saying some of the same things. By the way, I think I'm on the pro argument of the next panel of like defending Europe. So yeah. Question over there.
Hi. Great talk, by the way. You mentioned that the U.S. should basically make it so that only U.S. companies can hold treasury bills in order to issue stablecoins. I think that makes a lot of sense because, it's kind of like somehow can be considered like a threat. So basically what I noticed recently is that every time there is a stagnation or a decline in debt as a percentage of national income, there is basically like a disaster, which, you can create like any conspiracy theory you want about that, but you can also pretty much with some degree of confidence say that people who bankroll the US government have a lot of influence over the US government. Do you think that becomes a point whereby stablecoin issuers vacuum enough T-bills to actually have influence over the US government? And does that become a stage in the game where it's actually too late to outlaw, foreign companies owning a large percentage of T-bills because it's, kind of already somehow the U.S. is dependent on that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, the United States, through lobbying, has legalized corruption, right? It's what it is. It's legalized corruption is a way of like structure it in a way that, it's in the light versus in the dark, and you sort of try to control it and try to visibility and have transparency on it. And actually, in general, I'm actually very pro these types of systems, which is when something is in the dark, you just shine light on it and you do it, allow it to be done, but you allow it to be done transparently. So that's what, lobbying is. Let me tell you that Cantor Fitzgerald, which has a lot of the T-bills for Tether, was the head of Trump transition team. And so, of course, there's going to be influence. And you don't need to hold T-bills for you to have influence over the United States government is much, 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 much easier than that. And we saw it, right? Our super PACs in crypto. Finally, crypto got their head out of their ass, and we organized and banded together and raised $200 million, which was enough for us to kind of like be heard. There's 15 million Americans that are holding cryptocurrencies, and the administration was completely anti-crypto. So I don't think the influence is necessary. You presented a series of steps that gets to an outcome, which I think we can shorten because we already have influence, we already have outcome, especially now, with Sachs as a crypto czar, with the incoming OCC controller, with the incoming head of the SEC. I think you have a very different administration. Whether that's good and they'll be able to actually do the things that they want is different. But ultimately, I do think they have influence. One thing to say is that stablecoins are actually the 17th or 18th largest holder of T-bills in the world already. So they're bigger than the country of Germany. And so they're only going to get bigger. And I think the best thing about stablecoins is that they're actually replacing some of the demand that other countries have had in the past, like China, for T-bills. So they're great for our country because they keep our interest rates or our borrowing rates actually low because there's more demand for T-bills. And so they're actually like, in general, like it's mostly positives here for the United States government.
Wait, question though, why, the U.S. wanted China to have T-bills, right? Because it leads to alignment between countries. So why would the U.S. discourage any kind of foreign companies or foreign governments from buying them?
They wouldn't. This is a China-based decision. China is deciding to have less exposure.
Right, but in terms of your policy of not allowing foreign companies to buy T-bills.
Sorry, what I want is very concrete. The same way that champagne comes from France, in the same way that port comes from Portugal, stablecoins come from the United States of America. That's what I want. I want to incentivize everybody to hold T-bills, but I want the stablecoins that are popular in holding T-bills to come from the United States of America. And so that's a different thing. It's like, yeah, everybody can buy T-bills, except if you're claiming that you're issuing a stablecoin. In which case, it has to come from, the province of Washington, D.C. in the United States.
Other questions?
Is there a world in which like a foreign entity accumulating an extraordinary amount of T-bills, as you mentioned, right? Stablecoin issuers already hold more like T-bills than Germany, for example. Is there a world in which that can actually be a bad thing, though, where they have some kind of not influence in that they want to, have some regulatory capture or some friendly laws, but they actually want to somehow, to like negatively impact the United States and, start creating new economies elsewhere that don't even align with any of existing like nation states today?
So 100% there can be bad things. The way that I would propose you to view this is that one of the largest holders of T-bills for a long time right now is literally been the only other superpower that can rival the United States, which is China. So our adversary was our largest holder of T-bills, which, I mean, if you want misalignment, there's nothing more misaligned on like, maybe we're going to go to war with them, maybe we won't, we don't know. So more misalignment than that doesn't exist. And the reality is that the way that like the globalization of the economy has made us sort of closer has been also because we all hold each other's bags. And that's a good thing. If there's concentration power or concentration eventually creates distortions, I 100% think that's the case. I just honestly, candidly right now, I'm not creative enough to foresee how stablecoins specifically, which aren't really a nation state, especially stablecoins from the region and province of Washington, D.C., that are fully controlled by the United States and whose CEO can be thrown in jail, they're not going to be misaligned with the United States government because them and their children are all going to go to jail if something bad happens, right? And so it's just like this thing feels aligned on the ethos, so I'm not super concerned. But there's always risks that I don't see, and so I'm sure that there's some of them. The more power they have, the more of those exist.
Got it. Yeah, thanks a lot. I actually didn't know that about China.
Of course.
Hey, great talk, by the way. You mentioned the acquisition by Stripe, and you hear a lot of stories about deplatforming on Twitter, X, where Stripe vendors get delisted, they talk to bots and that kind of stuff. With crypto being sort of censorship resistant, like the last vestige of people that want to do commerce without censors, what do you think that does for those people when Stripe buys a stables vendor? Do you think that's centralizing and extinguishing eventually the censorship-resistant vendors, or what does that do?
There's many sources of censorship in the payment system, but one of the biggest ones is actually the card networks themselves. So what you're saying and what you're describing in many of these, the choke point 1.0 when we talk about this, but basically like Visa deciding tomorrow that they don't accept credit cards if you're selling guns, for example. Like this is a network policy or MasterCard policy. There's that level. In that level, we can't eliminate because crypto makes payments easier, sure, but we can't replace 90 million merchants around the world like that to now have acceptance of crypto where they have Visa acceptance. In fact, that's one of the superpowers of these card networks is really the acceptance network and the merchant network. That is extremely strong network effect that we've been able to create. So I think we focus a lot on interchange, we focus a lot on the rails. Visa can also use stablecoins to settle. They can also like lower their prices, stop paying the banks, and just use stablecoins to settle. They can get these advantages that we're talking about. But you know what they're not going to give up? 90 million acceptance points that you have something in your pocket right now, I guarantee you, which is called either a phone or a wallet that has a credit card that you can now pay for coffee over here. That's really strong. And crypto has no solution for that. There's no solution whatsoever. We've been trying to have like crypto to pay for coffee forever. There's no mass adoption solution. It doesn't exist. And so maybe it will, maybe it won't. It doesn't matter. But the reality is that Stripe is not the company, right? It's not the payments aggregator, it's not the PSP, the only company that really is in the middle here. There's a ton of them in place, and so there will still be the ability of saying, no, you're a merchant that sells guns. It doesn't matter if the acceptance of the payment is through stables or through credit cards. I'm not going to accept you as a merchant, period. And that's going to be where censorship is going to happen too. So just to say that, like, there's lots of things to solve until we get to that idyllic world, and that idyllic world I don't think will come because there's lots of reasons as to why you need checks and balances, including country laws. There's country laws about what you can sell and what you can't sell. And again, if these centralized companies are doing acceptance, then they have to follow the laws of the country.
More questions?
I just have a question about treasury bills. You said that the stablecoin companies, they hold treasury bills, right? But isn't there like an additional risk if, U.S. government having this national debt, it's increasing, then they're fighting, for the budget, they're fighting to raise the debt ceiling. So if it's one thing if the stablecoin just holds US dollar, right? Like just the currency. And another thing, if they call treasury bills, so would you think that there's an additional risk?
No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The only thing that you have to be considering there is maturity, like what kind of T-bills are you buying. That's the only added. What is the composition of the backing of the stable? If it's short duration T-bills, then it's exactly the same thing as a dollar. Maybe it's a delayed dollar, but it is a dollar nonetheless. Ultimately, like even if the United States goes bankrupt, they can always print more dollars.
Right.
So you're still getting the dollar back. It's just worth a lot less.
Right, but if you have a longer-term treasury bills, then you could still lose money.
Oh, 100%.
So,
but that's why the stablecoin issuers don't really have long-dated duration T-bills, right? They always go for the shorter ones.
So just last question. Do you think all of them have the same risk? For instance, I do have a little bit of like USDC, but I never bought USDT just because I don't know how it operates. Is there like a systemic risk how much, if you had to buy USDT, how much would you be able to hold comfortably? Like $1 million, $100,000 of USDT?
So I think I'll answer the question with this, which is the risk. I'm of the personal belief, for lots of reasons, but that at some point Tether, definitely seem to have commercial paper, Chinese commercial paper, and that's not a great way to do stablecoins, which is one of the risks of stablecoins, by the way, is that we've never had the current regime of stablecoins in zero interest rate environment. We don't know what that works, what that looks like. We have no idea. And the reason why Tether was so risk-seeking is because they needed to make money on the deposit base, but the interest rates were zero, and in Europe were negative, right? And so how do you run a business if you literally have to pay for the cash that is in the bank? Where do you charge it from? So that business model hasn't really been fleshed out, which is one of the risks of stables that we didn't cover, and I forgot to cover, is that we don't know in a zero interest rate environment what that looks like. So number one. But even in the current mechanism, I think the risk of Tether is steadily gone down. Is it zero? No, absolutely it's not zero. Is it a company that is a stable and is regulated as Circle? Absolutely not. I know Jeremy very well. I know the team. The team is amazing. I know the regulators. It's clear that it's much better, much more transparent. They have the QSIPs on the website. It's much easier to trust the backing of something like Circle. But they're making so much money that the amount of incompetence that you need to screw that up is so high that I think it's incredibly hard that is actually something that is not fully, transparent and clean. And in fact, if I had to bet right now, I would say that they're over-collateralized. The Bitcoin that they've been buying, they make so much money. And the money that they make relative to the deposit base is so high that it would take them 1-2 years to get out of the hole and now be, over-collateralized again. And so...
What was that Chinese relationship with Tether you alluded to?
It's these are all rumors. Nobody actually knows. They're notoriously a non-transparent company. But essentially, the rumors in some documents came out that sort of try to indicate, I don't know if they're true or not, but that Tether had, if you're a stablecoin provider, I give you $1 billion. Interest rate is zero. The money is not giving you anything, but you still have to pay salaries. You still have costs of operations, et cetera. So what are you going to do? You're going to invest it. And what are you going to invest it in? Well, you're going to create a portfolio, and you're going to invest a little bit in credits, a little bit in bonds, a little bit in whatever it is. And some of the things that they've been claimed for them to be invested in was Chinese commercial paper, so company bonds in China.
Got it. So not like a proven thing. Okay, interesting.
No. Just rumors. With Tether, it's mostly just rumors, right? It's always mostly just rumors.
Any other questions?
Hi. I was wondering, obviously for merchants and even consumers, the problem with actually holding stable is the zero interest in comparison to holding US dollars for bank deposit, for example. And do you foresee that there is, understand that Circle makes money from the T-bill or bank deposit with the high interest rate, but on the other hand, if the interest rate does go down, then I, as a consumer holding the stable, will not be, in a way, kind of in the same, like I'm not losing as much. So do you think that in that case, the adoption would increase, or are there any products that you see that me, as someone who holds stable, instead of, taking cash out of like Circle, for example, to actually invest in, that gives me the equivalent interest rates?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is exactly the question that you asked, but one of the things that I think is fascinating is that stablecoins were able to grow in a regime where the risk-free rate was 5.5 points. That's amazing. That's crazy. If I put dollars somewhere else, you pay me 5.5%, and somehow I'm leaving my dollars in something that has a 5.5 points opportunity cost. That's crazy. And you're growing the stablecoin deposit base with that? That's insane. So the interest rate coming down actually, if you believe in a world dominated by Tether and Circle, interest rates coming down actually, in theory, would increase the adoption of stables because holding a stable has less opportunity cost. And to answer the second part, I believe, of the question, there are many interest yield-bearing stablecoins. Some of them are regulating, like Paxos did one out of the UAE under ADGM. There's lots of them that obviously crypto native, and there's a lot of players that are coming at it this way. Why? It's just a better product. Why should I mean, there's no technical impediment of us having something that gives me the equivalent yield block by block. There's no technical impediment. It's harder. The big thing is that in the United States, if something generates yields, it's security. And if it's a security, it's not available and you can't have it. It's not accessible and you can't have it on your wallet and self-custody. It just becomes very hairy. And that's sort of the case, not for every, but for many different regulators, that once it becomes this like yielding thing, then it's a regulated financial product. And that's actually the thing that has been getting in the way. And that's actually the business model of Circle and Tether, is to bet on that continuing.
All right, I'm getting the signal. I'm excited to see your next panel where you steelman Europe's importance to the global crypto market.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much.